on my mind. Hello and welcome back to episode 5 of the ID Boxing Podcast with me, your host Rob Tebbert, joined today by our esteemed panel of guests, Mr. Andy Clark and Mr. Barry Jones. I was going to give you the full intro, but we've only got a wide shot for me today, so kind of ruins the suspense. But it's the usual, bunch.
You've taken all the wide shots.
There we go. Yeah, actually, I've been doing really well on my my diet the last couple of weeks. And then,
have you?
I have, yeah. Oh, and then over the weekend, I
regressed.
Yeah, really bad. So proper off the wagon.
Those moments when no one cares. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Anyway, how are you, Andy?
Good, thanks. I went to a show on Saturday early afternoon down at the old Peacock Gym. They're putting on these middle of the day shows. Basically, they had one in March. They had one on Saturday. They're going to do one a month. Martin Bauer's putting them on 4 or 5 fights. It was good. Standing room only. Probably about 250 people there, 25 quid. Yeah, really enjoyed it.
Happy days. There's no like official UK show no televised UK show Saturday evening.
No, and it's bank holiday weekend. So the idea with it is that you have it during the day, so that if you want to do anything in the evening, then you can go and do that. And it's just to get fighters out, basically. Boyd Jones was top of the bill. He drew with an Argentinian fighter, Brian Mendoza. He's been over before. There was an away win. Ahmet Patterson made a comeback.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, first fight since 2016, and he looks exactly the same as he did before. To be honest, he doesn't seem to have aged at all. Nothing seems to have really changed. So I'm really interested to see how he might get on, because I saw him win an English title at welterweight in Sheffield. And then he was due to fight Liam Williams, wasn't he, for the British?
And
yeah,
Gary Corcoran took
that's it
slot.
For the British at super welter, and I thought that was going to be a really good fight. So I am kind of fascinated to see what he might still be able to do, even though he's got to be 34 or 35 by now, I think.
Did you give a reason, a breakdown for his return, his triumphant return to the ring?
No, I called him afterwards and had a quick chat, but I just said, you know what, where have you been, basically? Yeah. And he just said, well, you know, life happens, that kind of thing. And when someone says that to you, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything strange. It's just they're not that it's a decent enough way to kind of shut the conversation down, isn't it? It's you're being polite, but you're also saying that it's not really something you particularly want to discuss, maybe because there's nothing to discuss, and it's just that you just drift away.
Boxing's an easy sport to get disillusioned. Really easy.
Yeah.
And you've seen loads of fighters who've been undefeated and just never box again for no reason except for what's the point? They're not going anywhere. You know, especially we had a few in Wales. Gareth Lawrence, Russell Rees. They were like around my time. They were like 8-0 and 10-0 maybe. Prospects, but nothing was happening for them. They just stop because they work and then they just don't come back.
Yeah, there's easier ways to make a living, as everybody knows. Barry, how about you?
You're a fine example of that.
Exactly, yeah. You sit around and take abuse from you all
He
day.
makes this look hard, though, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He does make it look
certainly by the look of my face. When you say that
it's one of those
Ahmed Patterson didn't look any different from 2016, I certainly do, Andy.
It's one of those, like, you wear a jumper to hide the belly.
Oh, yeah, I do.
But the jumper makes you sweat.
All black now. Like Wally Downs from The Sun refers to me as the ninja because I'm constantly in black, just moving around in the shadows. I think he's probably got some other nicknames for me as well, which we won't talk about.
Some shadows there.
Yeah. How are you, Barry? Did you have a good weekend? I'm hoping not.
I had a great. It was my granddaughter's birthday. I know it's not old enough. Stop it. Yeah. So I went up to Chester area to see her with my little kids as well. See my oldest daughter, so it was weird. So I'm out with my daughter, who's 30 this year. So and then I got, like, my son is 7, my daughter's 5, my granddaughter's 4. So either like a fantastically like young granddad or a pervert with a really young daughter with a really young wife. You know what I mean? I look like that. I look like a bit of a weirdo. Look at him, like that young girl and all the kids they got. So yeah, it's one of those situations. But we had a great time apart from that. I went to watch a movie called Who Gives a Shit? Let's go with the box.
There we go. He's lambasting me for being boring. Anyway, let's move on and move back and start this past weekend and move forward. There's lots of American shows, obviously no UK show to start on. I think we'll probably start from the main events and work our way back. Barry, going to come to you first for the return of the now two-weight world champion, Jesse Bam Rodriguez. Picked up the vacant WBO flyweight title by unanimous decision. What do you make of his performance?
Wasn't great, but I mean, he boxed all fine, and he was, but the movement wasn't there. Maybe because the guy he boxed was always on the moving round and he couldn't really get round the body. But I think he could have been. I think he had no respect for the kid and just went right at him, and that was quite clear. Even though he got his jaw broke apparently in round 6. But what he did, he was horrible in the interview after, which made me like Chris Mannix spent, won't keep you long, and asked him about 10 questions while his jaw was hanging off. But he on that showing, Sonny Edwards will be full of confidence, but I think he can box better than that, and I think he will box better than that against better opposition. I just think he thought, I can just be a bully here. But still good to watch. And if he hadn't boxed so beautifully, if I hadn't fell in love with him in past performances, then I would just see that was a good performance. He was solid and he was strong, he was aggressive, he was busy, good shot selection as always. But he didn't have that movement around the target that he did so well. He stepped back now and again, made him miss, and his footwork was still decent, but it wasn't the brilliant footwork we've seen in the past. So I was underwhelmed because of that. And he set a standard up here, and that's the problem when you're so good, when you could be so good that any performance below that opens you to criticism, and comparing against other fighters gives a window of hope for his rivals.
Yeah, I suppose it's kind of in his own way a bit of a victim of his own success. He kind of went from
I should have said that.
He went from hot prospect to beating 2 of the greatest super flyweights of the last however many years. And now he's back down, and as you say, Barry,
but the way he did it, though, it's more than just beating him. The way he did it,
the way he did it was spectacular. But he was against 2 fighters who like to stand in front of him. This is now 2 fights in a row. The Israil Gonzalez fight, another one from last time out, where Andy, he seems to have not shown his best foot, as you know, it can be said with regards to fighting fighters who are not going to stand there with him. And as Barry's just said there about certain Sonny Edwards, the IBF flyweight champion, he'll be full of confidence based on that showing this past weekend.
Yeah, he will be, and it's funny because for Sonny, that maybe wasn't the best thing that could have happened. I think with fighters like Rodriguez and anyone who blazes a real trail and looks so spectacular, there will always come a point where they have, to some degree, a kind of reality check, and it's a valuable thing to have, a thing where they have to realise that not everything is going to be on their terms, and their opponents are not always going to cooperate, however good they may have been. Some of the people that he's beaten, that things can always be difficult, and you can get hurt, because he has literally been seriously hurt with that broken jaw. We'll see how long that takes to mend itself. But I think it's a good thing, really, for anybody who's on that kind of trajectory. Things do always have to slow down a bit at some point, and he'll have, a few things to think about going forward, which I think is healthy. But like I say, strangely, I don't think it was the best thing for Sonny, really. I think it would have been much better for him if Rodriguez had won in quick and spectacular fashion, because I think it would have made his chances of getting that fight greater. Whereas now, it'll take a while anyway because of the injury. I don't know. I just don't really know if anybody really wants to fight Sonny Edwards. I mean, the fighters probably do, but it's just the teams around him. Do you really want to fight him, even though he's got a world title? And that it could potentially become really, really frustrating for him, because generally being avoided is something you can take out of the equation once you become a world champion, because you've got something that other people want. But is not necessarily the case, is it?
No, it isn't. And as we know, even though Sonny Edwards is now with Matchroom, who of course have Bam Rodriguez, Julio Cesar Martinez, it doesn't guarantee any fights happening. Barry, going to come to you first. Do you think that we see that fight next now? I mean, obviously, Bam Rodriguez has to recover. Julio Cesar Martinez is out on May the 6th. Could we potentially see that? There's already got that ingrained storyline between Edwards and Martinez. Do you think that's more likely?
I think we'll see. I think with his Sonny box before he boxes Bam, most definitely now. Who that will be, I'm not quite sure. I think they'll get him a defence at home. Where is his home? Who knows where he lives?
I think Sheffield.
He's like a nomad, isn't he?
Yeah,
but I think they'll get him here. But I don't know if he sells tickets, Sonny. Listen, I'm a huge fan of Sonny. He's brilliant to watch, but he's not brilliant to watch for the layman because it's not that explosive. Though it can be at times, but he's beautiful to watch. He has sublime skills, so I could watch him every day. But I don't know how that translates to the normal paying public. Certainly, I don't think he sells loads of tickets. Maybe
so.
He sold a few in the last one, didn't he?
Yeah, I wasn't at. We were in Mexico at the time. There was the fight with Felix Alvarado. I think the number was 4,000. That's been bandied about.
That's okay. That's fine. That's good. Yeah.
As a headliner,
that's probably more than what Bam's doing back in whenever San Antonio.
So 2,000 or 3,000. I think were there at the weekend at San Antonio.
So that's a good sign. And and I don't know what TV audiences will do, but I think they get him out and help build that fan base, make him look good. Or if he has a mandatory, I don't know. And then I think one of those. I don't know I've never had my jaw broken. I don't know how long it takes, but there's always a worry. Once things like that break, you're always worried about that might be a sign that happens again. And I couldn't see one massive shot. I think he got his mouth open, that's a terrible sign if you're fighting with your mouth open going forward. By the way, maybe he needs a double gum shield like Evander Holyfield. Yeah, and myself.
It'd be interesting. I spoke to Josh Warrington about it because obviously he had his jaw broken the Kiko Martinez rematch, and he said that it took a little bit longer. But obviously he's at a very different stage of his career, his life. I think he's 30, 31 at the time. Whereas Bam is young and hopefully he's back in the ring sooner rather than later, because there are still great fights for him. It feels like we're being quite harsh on him, despite picking up his second world title, Andy, and winning, very admittedly not in potentially the dominant, spectacular fashion that we thought, but still a unanimous decision win and a 2-weight world champion in 18 fights.
Yeah, of course. I mean, but he's just set the bar really high, hasn't he? And that's the price you pay when you do that, is that people will judge you quite harshly. But the reality is that, you're in with a solid opponent and you're not going to be brilliant every single time you get in there. And that's kind of what I meant when I said that these kinds of performances and reality checks are a good thing, because I'm not saying that he will necessarily have been getting carried away, but you look at what he's done so far, and it is very, very impressive. And I just don't think it does anyone any harm just to be reminded that anyone can be a hard night's work. Things are not always going to go your way, and you can be hurt. And this is a pretty extreme way to be reminded of that, because broken jaws are a tricky thing, like Barry says. And I've never remotely been in that kind of position, but it might be quite difficult to trust that kind of injury going forward, because there's no way you can really protect that, is there? It's you can't expect that you're not going to get hit on the jaw, because you are. And
even though Sonny's not the biggest of punchers, because he never holds his feet, who knows if he can punch, but you don't want to risk that on a fight of that magnitude. That would be his biggest fight. Well, actually, it won't be his biggest fight on paper, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean,
it won't be. But I mean, it'd be his most difficult night. But I always thought, that as much of a Sonny fan I am, that Bam was always a really hard night for Sonny, because the way he moves on the target will cut off Sonny's escape routes quicker. And also Bam moves around the target really fast, but holds his feet long enough to get purchase on the shots, which is very difficult, hugely difficult, and especially when you're young. So every shot's solid. But he still gets around the tag. He still gets around the side fast enough to make you miss, or to not know where he is. Sonny might have more of an awareness, but it will cut off his options, and then he will have to hold his feet and fire a little bit more, which is what any opponent wants Sonny to do. He might beat you in that exchange, but the only chance you got with Sonny is making him fight you. You have to corner him, put him in a situation where he can't escape, that he has to work away, and then you got a chance, maybe. And I think that would have been Bam's opportunity to win the fight. This is the guy that we've seen Saturday. It's a hard night for anybody, by the way. That work ethic he got, and he does. When he was coming forward, he was taking a little step back now and again, and bouncing straight back in really quickly, and he worked the kid over, cut the ring off effectively. Did a lot of the punches he threw were fantastic. It was a good night's work. But as Andy said, and I've already said, his standard's much higher now. So you're looking at him like that, and like I've said in the past with other things, you're looking at him, his performances this level, only world level, as comparing how he would compare against others. Sonny being the main one, or Martinez possibly, but Sonny Edwards is the one we want to see. But Sonny's lucky because there's a great storyline with Martinez with his brother, and obviously what happened with the drugs and the was it disqualified? I can't remember what happened.
Yeah,
I was disqualified. I was there. I was actually there. It was the weirdest thing.
Down,
But it was a mad thing because then they all got in the ring and changed their mind. And
Suleiman got involved.
Yeah. But so there's a nice storyline there. No, unless he fights his brother. But so wherever he goes, son, he's creating storylines that means that those fights are more sellable.
Has this changed the last couple of fights, the Israil Gonzalez fight and the fight that we saw this past weekend as well? Has it changed your view on how that fight goes, Rodriguez versus Edwards?
Well, the Saturday does. I think that guy Saturday, I think, struggles with Sonny. He makes it difficult for Sonny, but I think, he was too much in straight lines. Even though he cut the ring off well, I think when he actually went for the attack, they were always right in front of the opponent. Or were they? They actually weren't. Because he did it was very subtly, he took an angle just off the, let's say the line, I don't like using that word, off the line. He was just slightly off it when he threw and that's like a natural movement for him. So when you fire back, you have to turn. But with Sonny, he's got to do that real big arc close to the body. He's got to get right on the side of Sonny. He's got to be here or here. Because Sonny, if you're there, Sonny, because the angle Sonny can throw from, he's always going to catch you. And he'll adjust quite naturally because he has a quick thinking process. But there means he has to turn, he has to do the movements that other people would have to do if you were only there. But you've got to get there for Sonny to do it. Does that make any sense? So I think, that guy who gets beat by Sonny, I feel. But the best of Bam and the best of Sonny, I think I would probably edge towards Bam.
Andy, how about you? How does that fight play out now? We've seen Bam Rodriguez, I wouldn't say struggle, but we've seen him not look, the Quadras and the Shuichiro or Rungvisai fights. I mean, we really were kind of anointing him as the new king of the lower weight classes. Been less impressive, been less dominant in his last couple of fights. Does it change how you feel that fight might play out between Bam Rodriguez and Sonny Edwards? Not
particularly, because I think all of these competitors, they're all human, and those last two fights that he's had, in terms of how inspiring they would be to you as a performer, they're not on the same level as those other ones. So maybe just subconsciously, and it can only be fractions, it only needs to be fractions, you're not quite on that razor's edge as much as you would be for other people. But I think he will be against Sonny Edwards. So I do give Edwards a really good chance in that fight still, because he's so on point and he knows exactly what it is that he's trying to do in there, and he's been doing it for such a long time. He doesn't really change the way he does anything for anybody. I just really, really want to see it. I don't think that those last two performances will have any particular bearing on how Rodriguez goes about it. I think he'll be able to move it up that level when he needs to.
But it does give you an indication about the movement, defensive movement, because you're right, he did box Rungvisai and Quadras, guys who were always looking to work, which is great to watch, but also means you can, when they attack, you can make that movement easier, because they're half doing it for you. But yeah, so how he had to be a little bit more thought or more bull-like. Saturday, didn't think he thought too much. He just bull-like, and he was dominant. Less impressive. I think you got to mix wrong. Less impressive, just as dominant though. He won at a canter, but he wasn't as effective with the guy who was looking to be more negative, which Sonny can be. I'll tell you one thing about Sonny, he's tough. I don't think he gets any credit for how tough he is, and I think he can tough it out. So it's a great fight. It might not be a great watch, but I think it's a great, really intriguing matchup. Match Sonny with that Gonzalez, the guy he boxed. That's his name, wasn't it? Yeah. I forgot already. No, but match him. Do that like you should always do. And with building a fighter, match him with people who the other guy boxed, so you can compare performances, and that starts getting people on side who they think's going to win. Now, if Sonny stands his guy on his head, if he boxes in July now and fights him, he'll be up there, that kid, and he stands him on his head, then all of a sudden people's opinions will shift towards Sonny. Because I think the majority of people will probably go with Gonzalez, certainly over in the States, massively probably. And not Sonny will care, to be like, he'd probably love to be an underdog. But I think if he stands the guy on his head, which he's more than capable of doing, then people will start shifting towards Sonny doing a good job.
Yeah, it's an interesting fight. It only gets more interesting even with kind of, again, a less than spectacular performance, but still, as you've said, a very dominant win for Ban Rodriguez. Moving on, Andy, upset alert. Murodjon Akhmadaliev, who we'd spoke about in the preview show, had a certain Michael Conlon in, who of course knew him from the amateurs as well. Everybody speaks about how talented he is. We've seen it in kind of in fits and starts, I guess, in patches so far in his professional career, become unified champion, but no longer. Unseated this past weekend by Marlon Tapales by split decision. Big shock.
I mean, it is an upset because he definitely started the fight as favourite, Akhmadaliev, but his pro career has been a bit weird because he became unified champion in single digits in no time, really. And just since then, I know we've had COVID, but since then, he hasn't really done anything, and there have been opportunities there, or it looks like there has been for big fights, and they haven't quite happened. And it was a close fight, but I didn't see much of it. But by all accounts, I mean, you feel like Tapales deserved to get the win. Yeah. I saw people saying that it was close, but no one was really complaining. No one was saying that there was anything wrong with it, with him getting it over the 12 rounds. And we were talking about this before we came on, and I just wonder how well a lot of those Uzbek fighters, and I tipped them all up a few years ago, just to look out for the lot of them, because, Madrimov, Melakuziev, Gyasov, Guy Nazarov, there's about 10 of them.
Just making words up.
There's about 10 of them who've gone pro, all with solid amateur background. Some of them much more than solid. Yeah. Jalolov is the one who I think people would look at heavyweight and say, well, yeah, he'll definitely go on and do it. There's no definitelys ever, as we know, and unified champion. But I just don't know. I don't know if he's really gonna. I don't know if he's going to get back there, Akhmadaliev, to be honest with you.
Well, it's a damaging loss. I mean, we kind of made the point before we came on. I can't remember how too many unified world champions who have been on the undercard, propping up not as the main event, which kind of I think shows where he's been with regards to how he's been. No dig at Matchroom, but the way that he's been kind of marketed up to this point, he hasn't really had those fights where he set the world alight. And I kind of mentioned he's shown patches of brilliance in some fights, and then he's drifted, which I think was what we saw everybody apart from the judge who scored the fight 118, 110 to Akhmadaliev. I mean, that was one of the more interesting cards that we've seen this year, and we've seen a fair few of them. Barry, it's a big upset, but not a massive surprise, if that makes sense.
No, but you cannot do anything for. You can win one of the first 6 rounds, which is probably what he did, and then expect to win the fight, which he almost did. It was close. It was a close fight, but he didn't win it. Barely won a round. He didn't get started. I don't think. He just didn't do anything. It was just It was the weirdest thing. I think he struggled with Tapales. Is he was really side on, and he had a really good jab, and I think every shot was solid, and he struggled with that. He massively struggled with their side on movements, and and also he punched from a low. He got low as well. Tapales got really low when he threw up, and he struggled with that. Then he went to work. And he showed what he could have done. He got a bit of rhythm to his work, and in the second half, and then had the better of the second half. And you think, well, what's taking you so long? You must be knowing that these rounds are closer. You're losing. At some point, you after 3 rounds, if you think you haven't won a round, you got to go Or even if they nip and tuck, and you can be more effective doing this way, you got to go. Unless the guy's hurting you, which he might have been. But yeah, it was close, and I wasn't quite sure who won at the end, to be honest. I didn't really score it round by round. But I was a bit like that. I thought Tapales was winning the fight, and then at the end there, I think Akhmadaliev finished quite strong. I thought maybe he's done enough here, the champion, but I always had that feeling that he didn't do enough. I don't know where he goes from here now. That's a rematch, I think, because it's close enough for that. No rematch clause?
I haven't asked, but it wouldn't surprise me.
No, I'm being pedantic. Why would there be? Why should there be? But it shouldn't be allowed. But I think he gets it. It'd be where's Tapales going to go? That's probably the natural fight to get a rematch in a close fight like that, and gives him a chance to win his titles again. Then he's back in the mix for other stuff. But they were talking about him fighting the winner of
Inoue Fulton.
He's probably better off losing then. They'll all then bash each other up, and I'll come back when they finished.
Could fight Tenshin Nasukawa, who made his professional debut in Japan at the weekend. Remember him? Tenshin was the guy who boxed Floyd Mayweather in the exhibition, and Mayweather stopped him and he started crying. He's now made his professional debut. He made his debut on the Kenshiro undercard at the weekend. He wants to become the quickest world champion in history, and everybody was looking at the obviously super bantamweight. You got Fulton, Inoue, and Akhmadaliev, but now he's got Tapales. You never know.
Yeah. I want to be a unicorn.
Yeah, I don't. I think that's an ambitious shout. Yeah. I think that's an ambitious shout.
You saying I can't be a unicorn?
You could be anything you want.
I'd say there's an equal likelihood of both things happening. To be honest with you,
because I'm always horny.
There we go. But yeah, it's kind of what you said there. He's so frustrating to watch sometimes because it's in there. He's clearly talented. Where do you think it comes? Is it a mental thing? Does he not like getting hit? Because we've seen he does drift through fights, which is something that we've seen in the past. You find all
those, I say this about ex-Soviet type countries or Eastern European countries, whatever you want, they're always sort of methodically one-paced. Even people like Golovkin, as brilliant as they are, they're always like, let's go through and don't rush your work. Everything's neat, correct, tidy. But you can sometimes be lazy in that. So it's okay if you're dominating, but I don't think they don't panic, and that's maybe their strength. They never panic. But sometimes you need a bit of a panic, or your corner needs to put some injection in you to go. You got to go out and dominate from the offset. Maybe a bit of ring rust. I don't know. But I think he struggled with it. I think certainly he struggled with the style. So it wasn't great for him. Shorter guy who went really low, punched up, long arms, and and the distance maybe wasn't quite right for him, and he wasn't comfortable committing. But at some point he bit down on the gumshoe, committed. When he did, he looked a better fighter. And I think if he would have done that from round 3 on, he wins the fight. And then we're talking about him against Fulton and the other guy who no one should ever mention his name if anywhere near that weight. I might be close to that weight, and I don't want to mention his name anyway. Oh, I did it. No. But yeah, so yeah, and he gets in the mix with them, which would be a huge money fight for him.
Some interesting bouts still for him there. Luis Neri, I'm just kind of going through the rings, super bantamweight. I think Luis Neri beats Tapales.
Yes.
I think he really puts a beating on him.
Beats him up, yeah.
Venetian, who was obviously just boxed Neri. It's not the deepest division, to be honest. I mean, you're kind of going through it. Tapales, Ronnie Rios, Zolani Tete. Yeah, I won't go into that. But yeah, interesting to see Rai Salim, who's a good fighter.
But the top ones are good though, aren't they? That's the
thing. That's the thing.
Where he's at.
There's quite a big gulf, I think, between obviously we've not seen Inoue at super bantamweight. We'd probably guess that he's going to be half decent up there. And of course, Stephen Fulton, Brandon Figueroa's now left. He's got left the division, gone up to featherweight as well. He was a real handful. But yeah, Neri, I think, is probably going to be licking his lips in anticipation for potentially Andy becoming a super bantamweight world champion and then getting him into position for the winner of Fulton anyway.
Yeah, I'd imagine he will be eyeing that up, and it would be, after things that have happened in recent years with him, it would be good to see him kind of settle and fight regularly and do something like that, because he's always had ability, and he's good to watch as well. You're right about that division; it's up at the top of it, and it's been the same for a while, hasn't it? It's always been good, and in a way, that should mean that the big fights are easier to make because there's just not really anywhere else for them all to go. But theory and practice are often different, very different things. But Neary, without doubt, will be looking to get in on the act there. But Tapales now, he's the man with the belts, and he'll have his own ideas, I'm sure. Whether they include him or not, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I think it had all kind of been set up very nicely for Akhmadaliev to position himself for that massive fight, which is something that has eluded him so far in his career. He's not had the big names. Obviously, beat Danny Roman, beat Ronnie Rios, but he's not taking advantage of it, unfortunately. And now you see like somebody like Nery, he's still a big name in the division. He's only been beaten by Brandon Figueroa. Came back well as well recently against Hovhannissian. You'd feel like he's got his own kind of thing with Inoue and Japanese boxing, and he could be nicely positioned for the winner there. But we've got a lot to get through, so let's move on from the super bantamweight division and talk about another Uzbek, Israil Madrimov. Andy, I think I've stayed the distance with Madrimov since he's been pro, because he's again another Uzbek fighter who's shown a lot of promise in a lot of patches, and then in other instances he's really underwhelmed and flattered to deceive. And I feel like another performance from him this weekend where it's left us scratching our heads and wondering just how good is he.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think, yeah, he was on that list of fighters I named a few minutes ago, and I remember first seeing him at the World Championships in Hamburg in 2017, and he was a massive 75 kilos, and he kind of shunted Melikuziev up to 81, or at least that's what it felt like. If you spoke to them, which is not the easiest thing to do, kind of getting information out of national federations, it was kind of, no, Melikuziev was always moving up and all the rest of it. But if you looked at them, a bit like when you looked at Arlen Lopez and Julio La Cruz, if you had to guess which was in which division, you would have got it wrong. You'd have said it was the other way around, because he was just massive, Madrimov. Absolutely huge. And when he turned pro, I had pretty high hopes for him, to be honest, but I do just kind of wonder whether he, and this could be a bit of a common trait, as I mentioned, although you don't want to kind of stereotype all fighters from one country, is whether he's a bit of an on-top fighter, basically. Whether it comes down to that, or whether they just haven't quite been able to get the challenges for him that he's really needed. But yeah, we're quite a long way in now, and I don't really feel like I know necessarily where he's going. But the problem is, in that division, where's anyone going? Because
it's difficult. We're sort of like in a very different way, like the super bantamweight division, that it's a top heavy division, but it's actually not. It's top heavy when you're with World of Boxing and Matchroom, because all of the big fights are with PBC, Al Heyman. They've got all the belts. Obviously, we'll come on to Fundora. I mean, so wouldn't be surprised to see Madrimov Sorrow 3 maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Somewhere down there.
That Sorrow thing, I think that's what stopped him. And obviously, those two fights there, what happened in them two fights, those just put a little bit of a step in his career, haven't they? He probably would be a little bit further on now, because if you would have got a resounding win in the first fight, which was about 2 years ago, maybe now.
It was the same day. It was December 2021, so about 18 months ago.
Then he wouldn't have had that rematch, which again was another farcical thing in the end. So he would have been fighting someone else, and then this fight on the weekend would have been against a much higher caliber opposition or a bigger name. And all of a sudden, and then we're seeing him. I think he's the sort of fighter you have to chuck him in, and he's either forced to fight, he's forced to show how good he is, or he's not.
I felt like that we were getting there with the Sorrow rematch. I thought, again, even though that was called after 3 rounds, I thought, because the thing with Madrimov, and we've seen it, like he's sort of jumping around in the gym, doing all of these crazy, like flipping around. And he is, isn't he?
Yeah.
Like very
during COVID, there was that thing of him just like running up a hill on his, just walking on his hands.
Yeah, it's just like, okay. But like, it's sort of, at times in his boxing career so far, I felt like it's athleticism for athleticism's sake. He's jumping around, he's moving, he's wasting a lot of energy. He's like, it doesn't ever seem like it's been connected. Doesn't ever seem like there's ever been like a game plan. They've gone out and he's kind of gone and done it. And I feel like the closest we got to that was the Sorrow rematch, and then the cut happened. So he has been a bit unlucky. I think that's what it is. I think I would just chuck him in somewhere now, not well, close to world level, because he's there now with the WBA.
Yeah. So I think he has to take that step, and I think he'd be forced. You'd put him in a corner and find out what he got. I think what he got might be enough, but enough to win a world title, who knows? But I think enough to show that he's a quality fighter, and then you take it from there. Then you maybe chuck him in with a big name. But as you said, in his stable, there's no real standout, is it?
It's difficult to see where he's going to go, because obviously Charlo is going to be boxing, you would think anyway, at some point, Tim Tszyu. Then he's got all of his mandatories. I don't know where the WBA is in the rotation at 154 pounds, but even those kind of fringe level guys, they're all with PBC, really. Your Lubins, I mean, we've obviously seen Fundora get beat, maybe against somebody like a Sergio Garcia, somebody like that might be a good fight for him to just kind of...
Gabriel Rosado, isn't it? Obviously, just get it like...
Rosado's up at light heavyweight now.
Yeah, they're bringing back down. Chop a leg off and he could be all right, won't he?
He's boxing Bektamin Melikuziev. They're doing that rematch on the Javante Davis, Ryan Garcia undercard. I would think, I mean, I don't want to tempt fate, I would think that's probably going to be the last we see of Rosado. I think...
Now if he does the same job again.
Maybe not, but up until that point, I mean, Melikuziev dropped him with a body shot, was dominating the fight, and I just feel like even now, like since then, Rosado had the hard fight against Ali Akhmadaliev. He had a hard fight. He got really beaten quite convincingly by Shane Mosley Jr. And you just feel like...
How many times can you go in?
Yeah.
Have you met Derek Chisora? There you go.
Yeah.
As long as he'll go on, no one cares about Rosado, so they'll just keep using him.
And he's more than happy to get the shots as well. I mean, obviously, recently he was supposed to be boxing.
Boxing and judo care.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fine thing. They're two estranged things, but he was boxing. Or he was due to be boxing Zurdo Ramirez at light heavyweight against obviously a guy who's cruiserweight, heavyweight, however you want to look at it. So. There's no signs that Gabriel Rosado is ready to hang up the gloves anytime soon. But just going back to Madrimov, what do you feel? What, apart from obviously getting the opponents and getting the activity, what do you need to see from him, Barry? From a technical point of view, what does he do well? What doesn't he do well? What do we need to see?
His movement's fantastic, and his shot selection's decent. But again, it's just having that continuity of work. Again, like you said, not being more structured with your plan. What you're going to do. There don't seem to be a game plan. It's just literally, I'm going to go there and do what I do. And it's always good enough. That's what some fighters do. Roy Jones was compared.
I know what you mean.
Compared to, he was like, really had a plan, did he? He just went in, did this, I'm so good, I'll just do what I do, and I'll just think. And you need to be reactive in boxing. The plan has to be loose, of course, but you just have to have a plan about what you work, what the movement's for. Movements for movement's sake is just a wasted energy, as you've already said. So you have to have a plan what you're doing, but also that movement he has is what. He's thinking, I'm just frustrating you all the time, confusing you, you're never quite sure where I am going to be, and hoping that you make a mistake. So, but I do think, a bit more structured in his work, a proper plan going forward would be better. I mean, game plan per fight, rather than plan for his career, for him, just the fight management. I made all that up.
Okay, right, moving on, last fight that we're going to talk about from the Matchroom card this past weekend. A great win for Ray Ford. We've spoke about him in here not in here, but on the podcast numerous times. He's been matched well, Andy, and I feel like it's fair to say this was his toughest test to date against a former world champion, admittedly at super bantamweight in Jesse Magdaleno, but he passed the test with flying colours this past weekend.
Yeah, I think it was a really good fight for him. I remember first seeing him. I think he came over and boxed in Nottingham on the undercard of Jordan Gill, Enrique Tinoco.
He did, yeah. And
I spoke to him a bit that week, and I remember being impressed and thinking that this guy is definitely one to watch, and if they wanted to bring him back over here and see if they could build some kind of fan base for him here, which is always difficult, I know, but that I'd be keen on that, because he was one of these guys where he just looked kind of like mature beyond his years. He definitely did seem to have a plan and looked to know what he was about. So it hasn't really surprised me to see him kind of just go through, not quite the levels yet, but just take these steps in pretty convincing fashion. And that was an ambitious fight for him, but correctly so, as it turned out, because again, he looked really good.
He looked really good, and he looked, I mean, I don't want to kind of put it down to just natural size, but he did look the much bigger man against Jesse Magdaleno. I mentioned there's a super bantamweight, Ford, a featherweight, who's, you know, still very young in his career. So Barry has that elasticity. He can make the weight and then rehydrate. And he looked, to quote a certain Carl Froch, too big, too strong for Jesse Magdaleno, but also showed plenty of wrinkles to his work. I mean, he's just looking through his box rec now. He had that Aaron Perez fight, which was on the Chocolatito Estrada 2 undercard. That was a very close fight. Many people thought that he lost. That was a draw. He had a close fight with Edward Vasquez a few fights ago as well. Another fight that could have gone either way. So he kind of blows hot and cold a little bit, Ray Ford, but I thought he was hot this weekend.
Yeah, he was. I have fancied Magdaleno. Was he here the other way? I have fancied Magdaleno to do a job. I thought this is a hard fight for him. And again, because he's been slightly underwhelming Ford, I thought, yeah, Magdaleno put it on you. But size was a massive factor. But still, you still have to use that size to your advantage, and I think he did. The way he changed the distance constantly, Ford, was really impressive. I think Magdaleno just couldn't get nowhere near him, struggled with everything. So it was a good performance, dominant performance actually, and he needed that for his confidence, I think, because, you know, as much as you're building yourself up, you're having close fights, and you got to question yourself. I got away with that one, and we've all been there. Got away with that one. That could have gone the other way, but you push on, and he's got over the line. But that was a big against a guy who's, again, too small for any featherweight at world level, Magdaleno. But he's a world class fighter. You just beat a genuine world class fighter who, down at super bantamweight, if he got an opportunity to box for the world title, although he wouldn't win one because of who's in his weight, you wouldn't argue him up against anyone, even now. So yeah, it was the win he needed, I think. The name on his record he needed. But still, you want to see another big guy against him.
Yeah, for
Someone
sure.
his size, and see if what he did in that fight, he can replicate against a guy who's naturally big and he doesn't have the same advantages. I think he will. I think he'll grow from that fight, actually. I think he'll be a better fighter. I was quite impressed. I was really impressed. A good fight. And he could have easily been overawed by Magdaleno there. Magdaleno could have dragged him into a fight early, hurt him, and, you know, trying to be busy, which he was, and that would have made Ford a little bit untidy. And never. He kept his shape. He boxed well. He kept moving, rejudging the distance, and that made Magdaleno chase shadows.
Yeah, even when he hurt Magdaleno, he had him over a couple of times. He didn't rush his work. He kind of, like, little parts of it, and stuff that we spoke about with Shakur Stevenson and Devin Haney. He doesn't really, you know, if he's got the fight in the bag and he doesn't always.
Got to say about one of the knockdowns, one in the later rounds, because the commentary said it was a body shot, and I kept looking back, and on the app, on the DAZN app, it goes back 30 seconds.
Yeah.
I go, that was a headshot. It's an uppercut, wasn't it? Beautiful shot. And it was on the chin. So I kept, what the fuck's he on about? And I kept rewinding it, like, I was missing it. Am I missing it? I'm trying to see a different angle. And then he showed the replay, and he doubled down on it, Sergio Mora, innit? He doubled down on it, yeah, that's the body shot. And I'm like, what's it? And I had to go back again. Am I going mad, you know?
How far away do you think Ray Ford is? I spoke to him just over a week ago, so before fight week had started, and he was talking about, look, I want to look good against Jesse Magdaleno, then I want Mauricio Lara. That's what he said to me.
I'm not quite sure. I mean, when you're a neat and stylish boxer with lovely vision and movements and all that stuff, then you think you can outbox anyway. And when you see someone like Lara or Lopez, who are erratic but not the most technically gifted fighters, let's be honest, then you think, I'd dance rings around him. But what they have is, Lopez is powerful, I mean, but just go Lara, natural power and toughness and a bit more guile than you give him credit for. Even though it's untidy, it still works for him. I think he's a way off that yet. Not massively, but I think he needs a couple. He needs a fight. He needs a Magdaleno of a bigger size.
Yeah.
If we have that. Who is that?
Featherweight.
Kiko Martinez
boxed this past weekend.
Yeah, but again, that
was a fight that was being discussed for that card as well. I think they were quite close with that, and then eventually it became Magdaleno. But yeah, I think Kiko obviously lost the decision at the weekend, but you won't be bothered by that. I mean, he's got 12 losses now, and he's still there.
Remember I said it a couple of years ago, and I kept saying, I'm just going to bet against Martinez forever now, because you can't keep going to the well. I think he had about 3 good wins.
Become world champion.
Been a world champion again.
Become world and European champion since then.
But people were thinking that when he beat, what was it, when he beat Jonathan Romero?
Yeah.
People were saying that about him then, and that's, God, how long ago was that?
It was on the Barker Gill undercard.
Wow, that's 10 years ago, pretty much.
He's still there, still game. Moving on, we're going to go to Newark for the return of Shakur Stevenson. Andy, going to come to you first. Shakur Stevenson. I was going to say Shakur Stevenson doing Shakur Stevenson things, but it kind of wasn't really. It was Shakur Stevenson looking brilliant, but holding his feet a little bit more, not moving and staying in the pocket. And he really did a fantastic job this weekend in scoring the stoppage win over Yoshino. I was very, very impressed. How about you?
He put on a show, didn't he? And in front of a home crowd too. They've taken him there a few times, and I always loved that. Build the guy in his backyard, make that fortress, make it somewhere that other people don't want to go. He was terrific. And Yoshino is a very solid fighter, good fighter. And he played with him, really, to be honest with you. And some of the stuff he did, the little short left-hand knockdown, all of it, though, it was just... You couldn't really find any fault with it from beginning to end. In every single way, if you're watching it in terms of a boxing performance, you just think that was terrific. Piece by piece, he just kind of took him apart. And then if you're looking at it from a business point of view, it was great as well, because every time he fights, the platform gets bigger for him, even though, that wasn't a world title fight and he has won world titles. Every time he fights, it just gathers more momentum, doesn't it? And they've always been very confident, Top Rank, that they had someone very, very special. And he was probably the one fighter out of the Olympics, or one of the ones that you would have wanted most, because of just the way it worked out for him timing-wise. Did everything in the youth and then slipstreamed into the seniors, and at 19 wins a silver medal in a brilliant final against another brilliant fighter. And he's got a good story, and you can build him and all that kind of thing. But yeah, they know how to do it, and the possibilities now for him are endless, really, because he's talking about Devin Haney. Obviously, we've got to see what happens between Haney and Lomachenko, but he's up at lightweight now, and that's where the really, really big fights are.
Yeah, it seemed to me, Barry, the perfect way to announce yourself to one of the hottest divisions in the sport.
Do you know, I was watching it Sunday, all of it Sunday, loads of boxing, and Sunday morning I thought, I got loads of things to say about that. I can't remember none of it, no. But I remember the fight, but I can't remember what I was going to say. It was fantastic. He's as close to Floyd as since Floyd, I think. And I don't mean Floyd who was having to adjust because he was the smaller guy. I mean Floyd when he was a super feather, not lightweight. Lightweight was his worst, but he just knows where he is all the time in the ring. He's never off balance. Never knows. He knows exactly when to throw the shot, and he won't throw it until he knows when to. But he also can create the opportunity to throw that shot. Sometimes like he thinks I'm going to throw a left hook and it's not on, so he'll somehow force the opportunity to get it there for him. And yeah, and he didn't have to. No, I think he's a guy who can do what he wants to do when he wants to do it. Won't take any silly risks because he's so good he doesn't need to. But he just wore him down like with fun. By the way, there wasn't one moment in that fight that wasn't fun for him. I would say that much. It was absolutely just he's a joy to watch the way he goes about his work. You can see his brain working. Like you got a little like sadistic look in his face, haven't he?
Yeah, he enjoys it.
Yeah, he does. Absolutely, he does.
One of the things that most impressed me with it was he just constantly kept turning Yoshino, just touch him, turn him, whether it was like with a tap with the lead hand, just and then he went round there and then he was hurting him.
But also he goes up and down with the shots, and he's never you go there. He's not headhunting all the time. He whipped on the body, and when you think you're there, and you cover it up, he whips through the middle, and it just all the time, just moving around you. You just can't pin him down. You can't even sort of commit to rushing him because you just know because his balance is so good. And he's a nasty puncher. I think he's not a big hitter, but I think he's a nasty puncher.
That's one of the criticisms that's been of him at featherweight and super featherweight is just getting those It doesn't necessarily need to be a Julian Jackson one punch,
No.
but having that spite, going for it and getting rid of guys.
But he's understanding himself now. He's understanding his body more because he's maturing. So now again, he won't throw the shot unless it's there. He won't sort of blindly go, I got to commit, I got to force an opportunity here. Like a Floyd, I don't make mistakes. I don't take silly risks. But no, he's not understanding his body. He's understanding, actually, I can be a little more forceful because I am bigger. I am more confident and I'm comfortable in moving my weight and my power and my strength, more importantly. So he starts to understand his body a bit more, as you do when you get older, a little more mature. And I think now he's starting to punch a bit heavier because of that. Because he's not always thinking, make sure I'm safe. And even then he could dominate a fight by just skipping around and making you miss if he wanted to. He could have made that fight just as easy without putting any weight in any shot. But I think he's doing the right thing at the right time. And he could have got the stoppage 4 rounds earlier, I think. I think he could have got a stoppage whenever he wanted to. That's what I do. We're taking a risk. But he's not going to do that. I think he's that good that he can stand his feet and have a war and still beat you. Because he'll make you miss. But he thinks, I'm not taking that. That's the risk that I don't need to take.
But also on Saturday, I absolutely agree with that. But also on Saturday, I think there was definitely this feeling for me watching it that, he wanted to take his time. He wanted to show people what he could do. And it was a bit cruel and a bit kind of sadistic. Despite it's definitely there. And that's something I think you do need to see. He really enjoyed beating Yoshino up on Saturday in front of a big crowd on ESPN in America, Sky over here. These are big audiences, and that's what I meant about him just kind of delivering the goods for not just for himself and his own career, but Top Rank and the business side of it, and becoming more of a marquee attraction. He did play with him. He did play with him in a quite a kind of a nasty way. Getting someone out of there early, if it's a spectacular knockout, that looks great too. But I just thought that kind of painful dissection was pretty impressive, and it ended kind of when it needed to end.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want it limping on at that point.
I thought it was a good stoppage.
Yeah, I thought so.
In recent times, I think it seems like fights are kind of being stopped earlier and earlier, and to much people's kind of outrage in some quarters. But that was a fight whereby we've spoke about it on here before, where it was an argument to say it wasn't competitive from the first bell, but by that point, there's no way he can win the fight.
No, exactly, yeah, and that's always the key point, isn't it? I know you do always want to give a fighter their pride. That's really, really important.
That wasn't the worst stoppage of the night, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's
in a different venue, but
he'd had enough, and he would have kept going. And at that point, somebody needs to do the right thing, and that definitely was the right thing, because it was. I didn't need to see any more. Put it that way.
Would have liked to, but probably not.
I would say about Shakur Stevenson.
Yoshino.
He's understanding the business part. I do think, and he understands he has to sell himself. But I think once that bell goes, he boxes for himself and only for himself, and that's where the similarity with Floyd. I think once that bell rang with Floyd knew how to sell a fight fantastically, better than anyone, as it turns out. Those bank bands would tell you that. But I mean, he would. Do you want to get your phone? He would literally. Once the bell rang, it was for him, no one else. He didn't care he wasn't boxing for his family or for the memory of his late grandfather. He used to took him on the pads when he was only 3. All these stories you hear people say stuff, but it might be true. He, like most boxers, when your bell goes, you're selfish. But you can see it clearly. This is for me. I want to box this way. I can get him out early and take a risk, and it'll look better. And it might look better overall for you guys watching. This is my show. I'll do it how I want to do it, and you'll enjoy it, and you'll appreciate it. Not or you won't. You will appreciate it. I think he believes that. He believes his own greatness, and that is a sign of a potential of a great fighter. That you believe your own greatness before you're great.
Does he beat all of the rest of the lightweights?
No, with that build-up, no chance. I think he might. I think he will. Yes. I think he's the future of the division. Actually, America's sort of fighting back in it, to be honest.
Really, particularly around those weights.
There was 3 on that night, actually. But I think, yes, I do. I think Haney will be the size issue, will struggle. Lomachenko will probably be now too small for him and old, probably, for the movement that he has. Garcia and Davis, are they really lightweights anymore? Who knows? I don't know. But I think he'll be a super lightweight. Sorry, he'll be a super lightweight in another year if he doesn't get a big fight, or if he has that big fight already. So then, who does he fight then? You know, we'll see if Fimo Lopez still be around after Josh Taylor beats him. Or will Josh Taylor still be around? You know, Jack Catterall and Prograis, will they still be around? He might be able to pick all those off. And then certainly, you know, Ryan Garcia and Gervonta Davis, who are young enough to be his rivals. I think that's the new rivalry now, them three. And if weird how things change. Maybe we had this, we got a new, like, Fabulous Four. It was Fabulous Four, people call it Four Kings. It was Fabulous Four, the video of the four great fighters of
the books Four
of that
Kings.
era. Yeah, I don't read
George
books.
Kimball.
20 books. But so it was them. No, they had it, didn't they? But it was Lomachenko, Haney, Davis, and Garcia. Now Shakur Stevenson. Is he the wolf for Benitez who's just sneaked in?
Yeah, there's a hell of a lot of names in there, and you're going to ask the question to you that I've just asked to Barry. Does Shakur Stevenson beat the lot? Is he the best at that crop around 135?
I think sometimes in these debates it can depend who you see most recently, and he was terrific on the weekend, but then again Haney was really, really good going to Australia and beating Kambotas convincingly both times. If Davis, I expect Davis to beat Garcia. That's what I expect to happen. I think it'll be terrific. I can't wait for it, and if he does that, then he does it in really good fashion. The weight thing is obviously a factor. You know, where's he going to end up going? Is he still a lightweight, like Barry said? But then if you would come out of the back of that performance thinking, oh no, he's the best. And that's what's great about these scenarios, I think, is that often it is who have you seen most recently. Stevenson there still seems to be so much more to come from him, but it's just going to be fascinating to see what happens the first time he finds himself in a really hard fight.
He's going to take some beating.
Yeah, of course.
Put it that way. I think
who? By who?
For me, I think the best chance that somebody's got of beating him is Gervonta Davis.
So do I.
Because he can punch. And if you can punch, I don't really see. I think Shakur Stevenson's better than Devin Haney. I think Shakur Stevenson would outbox Devin Haney. I think he'd be able to keep Lomachenko. One of the things I was most impressed with this past weekend, and it's one of the things that we're going to talk about with Haney Lomachenko, is you can't let Lomachenko come forward. You can't let him get up ahead of steam, build up ahead of steam and come forward. You have to hold the middle of the ring, or you have to just stop him coming forward. We saw it this past weekend, Stevenson a lot more comfortable holding his feet in the middle of the ring and letting go of bigger shots, which we've not really seen from him at 126 and 130. So I think he beats Haney just by being better. I think that's a tactical fight, one that I'd really like to see. I think he holds the middle of the ring against Lomachenko. I think he outboxes Garcia. But it's just the power. If you're going to beat him, I feel like you're going to have to chin him, Barry.
Yeah, I think you got to be tall as well. I think you got to punch over his southpaw lead. So I think you have a long reach or tall. I just think how you jump into a guy who got great balance, southpaw stance. You know, when you're orthodox like Davis and you jump in against a guy with great vision and timing, I think it's hard. You've got to try and close that distance and get him really low, which I know he's short, Davis, but then you almost got to get in and move. You almost got to get in and move all at the same time around him to try and square him up so you can work away. I don't know. You need to catch, if you're going to hurt him, you've got to catch him clean. I don't know how that happens right now. We'll see it. He'll have a fight where he doesn't look great. Like, I wasn't sold on him when he turned pro. I thought he was good. I don't know how he was going to make it. I thought he looked too flimsy for me, but he's adapted so quickly that like he's as a complete fighter as you would find at the minute. I think. And
as Andy says, it looks as though he's just getting better. He's adding more strings to his bow every time he comes out.
He understands himself who he is now. He understands. That's what I mean. And he's boxing for himself. So once he gets in that ring, there's no worry or thought about, I need to do this, need to do that for other people. You know, there's an onus here that I have to sell myself for the next fight. They're backing him to be the next face of boxing, so it doesn't matter what he does. He just does it all solely for himself. Selfish man.
Cold, but like in a good way.
No, in a good way. Yes,
cold
and
withdrawn,
in the right way. Yes.
From it.
No, that's it. I remember Dak made this point, didn't he, when he was in a few weeks ago, Dak Taylor and And it was the point that, yeah, there's a generation of fighters now, and they're spearheaded by Stevenson and Haney with the way they've gone about their careers, who are massively influenced by Mayweather. Yeah. To a degree which they probably don't quite realise. Like, they realise, but... And it is that attitude, isn't it? It's, this isn't a kind of, you work for me. That's what they're saying to the promoter, isn't it? You work for me, not the other way around. And that, when you're young, that takes some balls, doesn't it?
Yeah, because you're still calling people Mr. Warren and Mr. Hearn over here. Like when you're young. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that, but I mean, they're like, I know I need you now, but I know that I won't need you in a minute.
Yeah.
And then whether I keep you on,
maybe not. Yeah, exactly.
But either way, he's a brilliant all-round boxer.
And it seems to me as though, it's become seemingly more and more common purely with social media and everybody calling everybody out every 10 minutes. But Stevenson, for me, I've always believed it. I've always believed that he wants the biggest, hardest fights. He took the Oscar Valdez fight after Valdez had looked good.
Let's not forget that. He beat Oscar Valdez, by the way. And I'm stylistically, he's made for him. But Valdez is a monster. That wasn't a hard fight for him.
No, he won the fight very clearly. And he's talked about wanting to fight Lomachenko for a long time. But of course, we've got Haney Lomachenko coming in May, which we'll talk about now. Before I do that, I'd like to give everybody, as I always do, go and watch that spar. Devin Haney and Shakur Stevenson from the Mayweather gym. I think it was before Stevenson went to the Olympics and Haney was a very young pro. That's a very good watch. Obviously completely different now, both different fighters, but it's definitely worth a watch. For me, some of the best boxing content on YouTube. But anyway, going to kind of jump over before we come back and talk about Vasiliy Lomachenko versus Devin Haney, which is of course now official for May the 20th. Andy, how do you see that fight going? Obviously, big fans of, I think everybody's fair to say, big fans of Lomachenko over the years, certainly from the amateurs and what he's done in the pros. Do you think Haney's getting him at the right time? Do you expect Haney to be victorious on May the 20th?
I can't make my mind up about this one because when I look at it, I can never really work out whether my heart's ruling my head or whether I'm able to kind of be totally impartial about it, because I like Haney. I've spent a little bit of time with him actually over the last 3-4 years. But I love Lomachenko. From the Sky commentator. But I love Lomachenko, and I can't really get that out of my head. So it's I do find it difficult because full disclosure, I would like Lomachenko to win because I think what he's done for the sport has been absolutely immense. I think the way he kind of was not mentioned in that new breed of lightweights off the back of losing that fight against Lopez, I thought was absurd, and people were just trying to kind of cancel him almost, to use a phrase from a pretty different kind of scenario most of the time. But they weren't they? And he didn't have a rematch clause, and that was kind of to his credit almost, because everybody was having them, although it was a mistake as it turned out, and he's had to wait quite a long time.
Because he might have won the rematch.
Yeah, he's had to wait quite a long time, and I just really hope he's got one more big one left in him, because if Haney loses to Lomachenko, it's not really going to... I'm not just going to say it doesn't matter. Of course it'll matter to him, but it's just, you'll have lost it in a really big fight against a really good fighter. And if you're going to take really big fights, that's going to happen to you at some point. So I'm backing Lomachenko, but I don't know whether I should be or not.
I love that.
Barry, going to come over to you for your unbiased take on this.
I know, I laugh because the wrestling, I feel the same way, because I think Haney outboxes Lomachenko, but how can you outbox a genius? That's blowing my mind. How can you outbox a genius? But I think he does. I think that I know it's not Kambosos is nowhere near the ability wise of a Lomachenko, but the way he controlled that second fight with his jab alone just showed the discipline that he'll need against Lomachenko. You just can't allow him in. Can't allow him in at all. And I think Lomachenko's a featherweight still, who's only moved up for opportunities because he's that good. He's too small for lightweight. And I think we saw that, even though he beat Luke Campbell. I think you saw that. And that was the first time I saw in that fight where he won that fight, and it was only one winner, and it wasn't close really. But you could see the difficulty he was having with the size, and it's been like that ever since. And so I just think, and I think his age and all that have a factor to play. Inactivity, all these things that inactivity for a long period. Like a lot of them have had with COVID. But I mean, for his age and how long he's been boxing for, with certainly as an amateur, I'm not quite sure. And he's just too small. He's so good though that almost the size, disappears. The size factor disappears against almost everyone because he's so. But I think if Haney was smaller, if they were a super feather or feather, then I still think I can't see anyone who beats him except for Shakur Stevenson. But I do think Haney wins this one. But I want Lomachenko to win because he's been just a brilliant. Because he has nowhere else to go if he gets beat.
That's I think exactly that. That's probably it, isn't it? If he loses,
because could everyone just closes their eyes to him and he doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
They go Lomachenko and then someone say, anyway, I was talking about, and then people will change the subject massively.
It's funny in another world, in a world where Vladimir Putin doesn't invade Ukraine, he could potentially already have the belts. He was due to fight George Kambosos. He'd signed. Yeah. He was ready to go, and then obviously had to stay in the Ukraine.
Kambosos.
Yeah.
Kambosos, sorry. Not an easy fight, though, by the way. I mean,
I think that would have been a really good fight, style-wise.
Yeah. I mean, ability-wise, he plays. He would be able to play with him. But Kambosos is so tough, like massively tough, and so committed that the size factor would come into play, the strength factor would come into play, and he would have success against Lomachenko, but Lomachenko would find a way against him. I think with Haney, he'll have success, and it'd be a really good, intriguing fight. I don't think it's not going to be a barnstorm, that's for sure, but it'd be an intriguing fight to watch, and one I'd love to go to, by the way. But I think the jab's going to be a real struggle for him to get past. I really do.
So with Haney, I feel like Haney is better than maybe I thought he was.
Yeah.
Certainly, I've been really impressed. I know we've spoke about it. Really impressed with how he's taken everything in his stride. Went to Australia, no problem. My dad can't get in, no problem. Ben Davison, no problem.
I forgot about that.
And he was fine. He was unruffled, and then I got to beat him how many times? Twice, both of them. Yeah, no worries. But I originally thought Haney would win the fight. I don't know whether I've overthought it, but the longer it's gone,
I've definitely overthought it.
If you can't back Lomachenko up,
there was no clue in that when you were talking about it.
I've overthought it so much that I've just ended up right back where I started.
But I've gone from thinking Haney would win to now not being sure, which I think is obviously a sign of a good fight in general. But if you can't back Lomachenko up, it's going to be hard to beat him. And Haney, for all of his size and all of his skills, he does everything on the back foot. He doesn't really hold the middle of the ring. I know he did at times against Kambosos, but Kambosos very one-dimensional. Doesn't have the bag of tricks. We've seen Jojo Diaz, southpaw, naturally smaller, backing Haney up, landing the left hand. We've seen in Lomachenko's career so far, he's lost 2 fights. Salido, okay, whatever, heavy, low blows, but still, he came forward, no respect, pushing back.
All that was a massive factor, yeah.
Lopez was, it all came together, and it may have been that was just his night where it all came together. He was brilliant in that fight. He held the middle of the ring. He was ready to fight. He was strong. He was intimidating at 135 pounds. Lomachenko had been out of the ring, got hurt, and kind of even then, like as he was able to come forward, he started to pick up the rounds.
Close fight. Don't forget that.
Really picked up the rounds, and I just don't know if Haney can stop him coming forward. And if you can't stop him coming forward, you've got a big problem. And that's what's been playing around in my head. Haney, again, we saw him in the rematch in particular on the scales against Kambosos. He looked very, very dry. I know it's hard for everybody to make the weight.
He's a big super lightweight.
Yeah. I know it's hard for everybody to make the weight, but just how bad he looked on the scales there, where however many more months, you mentioned the Luke Campbell fight. Luke Campbell said to me in the gym afterwards, he said, I've never been hurt to the body. He said, and he hurt me to the body so many times. It wasn't loading up. It was just the right shot at the right time. It's just short. Oof. Oh, I felt that. And then, oof, I felt that.
Yeah, but then 2 fights later, he gets dropped with a body shot against someone else.
Yeah, but at the time, he'd never been hurt by a body shot. And again, you don't look at your Lomachenkos and your Usyks as particularly devastating. You know, they're not Julio Cesar Chavez, like left hook to the body merchant, but they're good body punchers. Yeah. And I just feel like if you can't stop him coming forward, you're going to have problems. And we did an interview with Alexander Vozdik, who, of course, part of the same Ukrainian Olympic team, trained with Anatoly Lomachenko, Papachenko. And he said that because we'd all seen the Jermaine Ortiz fight with Lomachenko, and I think the general consensus was he wasn't the force as we've seen him in the past. Now, Vosdik said to me, he said, but they're very clever. I'm not going to do the accent. He said, they're very clever. They had Jermaine Ortiz in for sparring for 2 camps before then. So he's seen it. He's seen the matrix. He's seen the angles. He's seen the round here and round there. And when he went into the ring on fight night, he was ready. He was prepared for what he was going to face. And Jermaine Ortiz is a good fighter. He's not Devin Haney. He's a good fighter. But you've had 2 camps where you've been his chief sparring partner. Then you've gone into the ring on the night. And you know what you're expecting. How do you get sparring? We just spoke to Shane McGuigan and Luke Campbell about it. Getting sparring for Lomachenko. How do you do it?
Well, they could have rang me, but...
So Haney's not going to have that. Lomachenko's still going to have the surprise factor. So that's kind of playing in my... But when the fight was originally made and they got in the ring and Haney was there, so I thought, yeah, Haney wins. Haney unanimous decision. And then I started to think about it and overthink it. And now I just don't know. I think he might do it.
But also, what enters my mind when I think about it is these reports of Lomachenko's demise could be greatly exaggerated. Yeah. And he's had a long time to think about this. And if he still really wants it, and we've got no reason to think that he doesn't, then this is so big for him as well. That's the other thing in the context of his career. Because
his whole career.
Yeah, because this would be the exclamation point on an absolutely spectacular pro career if he can become undisputed at lightweight, which of the 3 he's operated at, as Barry said, is actually the one where he's weakest weight, for sure. Basically. If he can do that, then he will, without a doubt, for me, he already does go down as an all-time great, amateur and pro, but there would be no argument on that score, because there are still plenty of people in pro boxing who don't really want supersonic amateurs to come out and do what he's done. They don't. I remember the kind of outpouring of glee from some quarters when he got beaten by Salido. And I remember watching one post-fight interview with him. I don't think it was in the ring, but Larry Merchant was even a bit kind of, welcome to pro boxing, kid, and all this kind of stuff. And you just think, yeah, the other guy's coming heavy and punched him in the dick quite a lot. So
and
that
still,
might have
still
some,
a really close fight.
And he was still really close. But there's, I'm not, he was one of a number.
I get that. I know what you're saying.
But there are, aren't there? There are plenty of people that they don't really want it to happen, and people talk about legacy a lot. But for Lomachenko to just be a bulletproof, no argument, all-time great, which is what I think he is anyway, he does need to win.
Lomachenko, like, if you throw a good jab, like you got access to work for, so you throw a jab, and usually that's great for him. If you're a straight boxer, like Haney is actually, then that's great for him, because then he got something to work out around. That's perfect. You can't beat him. But when you got shoulders this wide, and you got good footwork, and you can throw the jab, and you got a massive step back. Now Lomachenko closes distance as good as anybody, maybe better than anybody, and he closes distance, gets around the target as good as anybody, maybe better than anybody. But there's such a lot of ground to follow, and also you got this or whatever, you got this shot to come off it, that, and I think the discipline that Haney can show, and the size difference, I think that gives him just a massive advantage. I do. I think if he was a little bit weaker and shorter, I think he didn't have such a long wingspan, I think that would be better for Lomachenko. But I think the movements of Lomachenko as well, as he steals the space and comes in, then intimidating things. Everyone does it. Every great boxer has an intimidation factor, whether they're big punches or not. And Golovkin obviously steals your space with small steps, but so a small step gives him distance to hit you and hurt you. And Lomachenko, bigger steps, and then he confuses you because you don't know where you are, and they're shots you feel without them knocking you out, but they're hurtful punches, as Luke Campbell will attest. But when you're smaller, naturally smaller, and it's been a factor, I think, and against a guy who's naturally bigger than the weight you're boxing at, and you're smaller than the weight you're boxing at, though he's been there for a while, so he's filled out, I think you'll struggle. I think that you're not such an intimidating figure. As brilliant as you are, I think it won't work. I don't think it just doesn't work as well. I think he's still a great fight, and I wouldn't be shocked if he wins. I think it's that sort of fight. But I can see you cannot make Haney the favourite now.
I think Haney rightfully the favourite. I guess with having that right hand. I mean, we did the pod. So we did the pod where we said, I don't see any way where Teofimo Lopez can win, and then afterwards we went, oh yeah, he won.
I've done that a few times.
Yeah, we had
just insert the fighter's name.
We had a really bad spell of like 3 and 4 where we got it completely wrong.
But when you're looking at fights logically, though, you only go with that. I don't go with I just got to feed.
You're right, but
that's the beauty of it as well, isn't it? That you know, every now and again when there's a fight where there is a logical choice. You'll get a number of people who will just pick the other person.
It's the contrarian,
the contrarian. They will just pick the other person, and most of the time they'll be wrong, but you'll hear a lot from them when they're right.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of people play that game. But you know, if you're going to look at things logically and rationally, then often there is a clear enough favourite.
Yeah.
And that's where you end up going a lot of the time. But it doesn't mean you're always going to be right, and it would be terrible if everybody, you know, if the logical choice was always the one that won. I mean, what would we even be doing here? Sport would be bullshit, wouldn't it? No one would watch it.
But it's always with a caveat as well. You're going to say, well, it's going to be him early or him late or him on points or him...
Fury Wilder one was just the best one for that, wasn't it? And people get us for a prediction and they'll just go, Wilder by knockout or Fury on points. It's not really a prediction, is it?
It's when people say this, he's trained really hard, or they've trained really hard for this, and they really want it. Oh, well, in that case, then that totally makes sense. And the other person, or woman,
can't be asked. He's having a cigarette.
But I would say though that like I said, with Haney throwing those, like being predominantly a straight puncher, that always works well for Lomachenko.
Yeah, and that's kind of where... But he doesn't have the same threat as as Lopez had. He hurt him with a right hook in the second round to the top of the head. And like people can say the one about the downloading the data. We all know Lomachenko takes a couple of rounds, see what he's working with, and then kind of goes to work. He got hit with that right hook in the second round. And I believe, anyway, that he thought, okay, shit, I didn't expect
made him
that.
Back off, didn't
it? And then it took him a little bit longer to get into it. He had the inactivity as well, so it does take you a little bit longer. But it was ultimately predicated on the threat of the counter. And every time he came forward, Lopez fired every single time. And it all came together with him that night. With Joey Gamache in the corner with his dad, kind of keeping his dad somewhat sedated, I guess, I suppose. But it all, like the Commey fight and the Lomachenko fight is where it all happened for Lopez. And it just kind of, after that, he's talking about where he had like the big issues promotionally with Top Rank, and he ended up going on Triller and then Matchroom, and then he lost the belts. But for those two fights, he really fulfilled that promise. And I feel like the big part of that was just the predicate, the threat. The threat of the power as was what kind of kept Lomachenko at bay longer than was maybe necessary, or certainly from his point of view. And I just don't know if Haney has that. But if you give up the middle of the ring to Lomachenko, you got a big problem.
But Haney will throw a solid jab. That's what I'm saying, and take a big step back. So, okay, you say Lomachenko will just keep following Nick in his space, but Lomachenko will dip in and have a look. And again, and see what comes back or whatever, and then he'll make that movement again, but then he'll go off it. But then when he gets caught with a jab or he makes him miss, whatever, he blocks it quite a lot, and he blocks as he steps in. He'll know he's too far away to hit the target, so he knows he's got a double step. But then Haney can go bap bap, and he always got this. And if he takes a bigger double step, the second step is bigger. Haney throws that right hand and turns from, uses all those massive shoulders and turns from the hips, and solid shot. Then he hits him, he stops him in the track. Then Lomachenko goes, I've got to find a different way in. Which if anyone can find a different way in, it's him. He'll find a different way in or every time. But I mean, it's harder. Then he's got to take a risk and punch from too far out. I think it's going to be very difficult for Lomachenko, as difficult as it's been, to close that distance with his feet. By the way, he's the best at doing it in the sport today, still, at doing that. But it's going to be really difficult, I think, with Haney. Again, because he's not intimidating. The size is going to be a massive factor. And, I hope I'm wrong, actually. I do want Lomachenko to win. Not going against Haney, I think he's fantastic, but...
He could come again.
But not even that. Not even that. It's just Lomachenko's just been magic to watch. And the nights I spent with him back in the old Box Nation days, watching him and just like drooling over him. Look at this. Like, this is just the best thing I've ever seen. I don't know what I'm watching.
Watching you and Steve Bunce, when he's boxing Chonler Artan Piria Pino with one hand.
Just a joy to watch. It's just, you just go home, like go in, Oh, what was that like? That was just poetry.
I move on and move back. Barry, going to come to you first because you love him deeply. The real big baby, Jared Anderson against George Arias. George Arias went in, look, unbeaten against what level? Make your own assumptions. But I think he was brought in to give Jared Anderson some rounds, and he did not.
He's brilliant, isn't he?
Very good.
I tell you, he's good. That's the problem. And I think he's moving faster than what I thought he'd move, to be honest. And no one's going to want to fight him. He's 6'4", small heavyweight. But the athleticism he has is fantastic. The movement and the speed he has in his punches. And he's not a massive one-hit wonder. But the accuracy in his work, the movement, he enjoys it as well. And you're seeing, that's what you're seeing now with these new breed. They're enjoying their work when they're in there. And I think there's been a gap where that wasn't always the case. When people it was all business, but they're thriving on fights. That was an easy night for him. Like as easy, like that could have been another journeyman. It might turn out that kid wasn't as good as his record suggests, but it was meant to be a test for him, and it was nothing but that. He's good, man. He's very good. The movement he has, the footwork as well. Again, we talk all of them actually. Him. Obviously going on Keyshawn Davis and Stevenson, the movement with the feet, constantly adjusting the distance, is just brilliant. Just doesn't give you any hope of firing back when they throw punches, because they go pop and they put weight behind it and they just take a little step out or step to the side. And it's only a little step, but it's enough for you to know you can't hit them back. And then with him, he's happy to throw uppercuts through the middle, and he's happy to throw it short or long because he just knows his feet can get him out of trouble all the time. He by the end of the year, he's knocking on the door. I mean, massively knocking on the door.
Andy, I was very impressed with him. I thought
he beats Jermaine Franklin today.
Yeah, I think he beats Jermaine Franklin
and Dillian White today. Yes, I think. And all them, Derek Chisora, but I mean, all them guys who bigger names are having as testing fights.
The heavyweight gatekeeper really is the type of level that he needs next. It needs to be
It's not going to be the easiest thing to do.
No, because how much am I getting paid to fight this unbeaten 6'4" guy?
You're gonna have to really,
moves like he's 5'10".
Going to have to really pay the money, because otherwise people just won't be interested in it.
They've got F.A. Ajagba. That could be kind of a good fight that they put in with like two fringe guys.
They'd be kind of sacrificing Ajagba, wouldn't they? Really?
I think they're probably seen his limitations.
Yeah.
Now.
I think they would be top rank of the best.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to matching, when it comes to moving fighters, and they're ruthless
to their
enough.
Ability level, they do it.
Yeah,
right,
they're ruthless enough, because you have to be, that they'd be happy to say to a joke, but listen, like, this is it almost. We'll put you in and let's see what happens. But that card on Saturday, I thought, was just a massive success for
really
Top Rank,
success.
wasn't it? Because
Bruce Carrington on there as well.
Yeah. That's
Troy
it.
Isley.
Yeah, exactly. I remember talking to their guys at Wilder Fury 3, and at that point Stevenson's quite a long way on, obviously. But the two other guys they were really sold on were Keyshawn Davis and Anderson, and correctly, because what a great showcase that was on the weekend for not just those three, like you say, but mainly those three. And they're young and they're marketable, and they've just got so much going for them as a trio. But Anderson, the problem is going to be, who are you going to get to agree to fight him? And you're going to have to get the checkbook out. It's as simple as that.
I think they'll see him as like, oh, he's not the biggest hitter and all that. And you tend to think, I think he can hit, but again, he's not the massive one-punch hitter. And they tend to think, especially in that division, if you're not a big, massive hitter, then you can't take a punch, or you might be vulnerable. So if you can't hurt me, I can walk through you. So with Dillian White or Chisora, I know I don't want to slam to the slaughter, but they're still fighting, and Chisora's still fighting. He's still allowed to fight, and he still thinks he's ambitious and all the rest of it. So, like, they'll think they'll be able to walk through him and make him feel it. I walk through his shots, which is a massive mistake. But those sort of fighters, he bashes up.
What about Takam?
Yeah, I like that.
Oh, Takam.
I mean, that would be, with that win over Yoka, Yoka's not turned out to be what people were hoping he might be. That's just how that's gone. But that was a real good win.
Yoka can't box. I always say that from an Olympic champion who won it by moving.
Yeah, I know.
By the way, he can't box.
It's kind of mind blowing, isn't it?
He's lost all his confidence in throwing any punches. It's the weirdest thing. I've never seen a massive just confidence crisis of a fighter as him.
But Takam's kind of, he's a confident guy. He's still in very good shape.
Yeah, but he's 5'11".
But I think it's
he went the distance with Arslanbek Makhmudov.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Well.
I think he might do it against.
I think
that's a good fight. Yeah,
it's a good fight.
I like that, and I think for me, most impressive from Jared Anderson this week. He boxed Jerry Forrest a couple of fights ago. Has it been in that type of mould of sort of fringe? Maybe not fringe. It's probably been a bit gatekeepery type. Boxed Zhilei Zhang, boxed Jermaine Franklin, among others. And there was a couple of moments in that where Anderson had him hurt, and he just got a bit gung ho, and he got clipped with a couple of shots. And there were kind of bits that I was looking at and thinking, okay, well, he probably needs to just develop and experience and stuff. And I felt against Arias, he sort of, he looked a little bit more settled. He's still aggressive and adventurous in his work, but when he had him hurt, he didn't,
just checking.
Yeah. As opposed to what he'd done against Forrest. So I feel like he's ready to go now. If you've done that, if you knocked out Jerry Forrest in 2 or 3 rounds or whatever it was, knocked out George Arias in 3 rounds, somebody like a Carlos Takam, I think is there. Or if again, I mean, I understand why potentially they might not want to put FAA Jabber in there, but we saw his limitations against Frank Sanchez, and then we saw him against Stephen Shaw not set the world alight as well. And I mean, Stephen Shaw's kind of a sort of B tier, maybe even being kind to him heavyweight. It's not really done anything of note. So, again, a potential way of putting Anderson over is getting him in there with and look, he can punch. A Jagba can really punch with a right hand. You never know. You might have to take a right hand, which is another box that you can tick, or not, as it may be the case. But I feel like Takam, a Jagba, somewhere around there might be what might work.
But there's still fights he walks through. He beats Hrgovic now. I think he beats Zhang as well. Anderson.
So you're only talking top 5 that he maybe
I think so. I think so. But again, it's like you don't want to put him against Hrgovic or Zhang because.
But after then, where does he go?
He has nowhere to go. So he still wants. Do you want to make him you want to have potentially on paper those tests that he might have to face. You want to see him get caught or not have a bit of success, possibly a little bit more than he has, because that division, of course, if all of a sudden you can't take a punch and expose, once that happens, there's no going back.
That's true.
That door never closes.
That's true.
Yoga just needs to go back to like he never boxed before and learn how to throw a jab again. That's his issue. But I mean, I would put right now Anderson would beat Hrgovic, who's number 1 in the IBF. Zhang, who's going to box Joe Joyce now, and then will be mandatory for everybody else. And I think he beat him. But again, you don't want that test straight away. But if that happened, I got no problem with him. Again, then you got the issue. Then does he beat? How does he fare with Anthony Joshua? This Joshua we're having right now, again, now it's still in a little bit of a crisis. It's a hard night for Joshua. Really hard night.
Yeah, because particularly with somebody like Anderson, you need to deter that youthful exuberance.
I think I don't know, but I think Anderson can dance and move and move and move. So I say move again for 12 rounds. I think the fluency he has in his work, you're gonna have to force him like a Joe Joyce, force him to throw punches when he doesn't want to throw, to tire him. I think if he's just making him move, is not going to be enough. Because he'll be able to set himself to throw his shots and keep moving, and he likes to move. He has a natural rhythm to his work, which means he'll move all day long, and he can be aggressive. But if you make him throw and he doesn't want to throw, that's when you can tire him out, and that's when the gaps might appear. Right now, with the inexperience, so someone like a Joyce would be a nightmare for him. Though he could stand on his head until he got knackered after 9 rounds.
Gets juggernauted.
Yeah, but he beats his other two. The two I mentioned. They beats Joyce opponent next week, I think.
This week.
Yes. Sorry.
Right, final one from Newark, because we are extremely pressed for time. We did start late today. We're not going to point any fingers.
50.
Listen, we're not pointing any fingers.
15 minutes late, and then I had to wait here for 10 minutes before you got started.
That's terrible. I mean, again, we don't know who it was who was late.
And I text, can Simone get me a coffee? I meant someone I couldn't spell. But anyway, Simone didn't get me a coffee, so thank you.
Anyway. Keyshawn Davis, in a good step up, Andy, I felt this past weekend against somebody that we're all very familiar with on these shores, on this side of the Atlantic, against Anthony Yigit, of course, decent amateur in his own right, world title challenger, European champion. I thought Keyshawn Davis dealt with him in good fashion, albeit he, Yigit, as I think we would have all expected, didn't go there and roll over and make it easy for him, but ultimately he was just outclassed by a better fighter.
Yeah, exactly that. And the reason they were keen on him, Yigit, as an opponent, and they have been for a while, I think they've been trying to get that fight done for a while, was for all of those reasons, that they knew that he would take the fight. They knew that he would also be ambitious and feel like he could do something. In reality, the likelihood of that happening was not great, looking at it impartially, but Keyshawn Davis is just moving in the right direction, and he has been from day one, really. He had that kind of strange interlude with the Olympics, whereby because of COVID and the fact that his ranking was still high, even though he turned over and Team USA would never allow that normally, he was able to go back and box in Tokyo. Same with Duke Reagan. That was an unexpected bonus, but it hasn't really affected anything. I did hear another name around him kind of earlier in the year when Top Rank were here for Beterbiev Yard, and that was Francesco Patera.
Oh, yeah. Again, similar sort of level.
Yeah,
European
exactly.
level,
Exactly. And
naturally,
maybe they're looking to kind of, pick off a few Europeans. But like I said, he's another one who they've always been really convinced about. One of the ones they were most keen to get, and
you can see why.
You can see why. Yeah, you can.
He's got we always talk about, or everybody always talks about, adapting from the amateurs into the professional game. Particularly, I know the amateurs is becoming more.
It's still a massive difference.
Yeah, exactly. But he always looked like he had that sort of style, Barry, that would transfer well into the pros, and so it has shown.
He's been nasty, isn't he? A little bit of spite, I think, in his work. But the way he puts his punches together is really impressive. But again, pretty much like Anderson and Stevenson on that night, it is the judgment of the distance that sets him apart from others. He balances great, knows where he is all the time. When Yigit trying to throw shots, he just sees it before Yigit throws it. It was so easy for him. Really was. It was entertaining actually with Yigit doing all that crazy stuff. And
he goes for it, doesn't he?
Yeah,
you can tell that's
one
of the reasons we wanted to bring him in.
But he's going like that. His eyes like this. He's covered in blood. Like, come on, you can it. But he was really good. Davis, really good. It was the right fight for him. I think that level to show where he is. Again, he's a fight you don't hold him back now. Just let him go. Let him go.
I think one of the things that's most pleasing for me to watching Keyshawn Davis is he always, you always say it, he always has time, sign of a good fighter, but he has that switch where he can go through the gears. If he gets you hurt, he can go through the gears and put you away, which is obviously nice to see. 3
fighters here, I sort of made this up today actually, what I said, but they do fight for themselves, solely for themselves, and you can see how much they enjoy it, like hurting people or beating them up, like you said with Stevenson, taking you apart piece by piece when he could maybe get it done earlier. That's not good enough. You want to do it my way. But you can see the joy. They're not smiling, but you can see the joy in their eyes when they're working, and it's a pleasure to watch, because you want to see that from your fighters who are going to be top level, which they all are. They don't know. Obviously, Stevenson's already world champion twice over, but Keyshawn Davis, the only reason he's not going to win a world title anytime soon is because he's in a weight division where it's really difficult. Right now, you might have to wait a little bit.
It's going to be interesting when he gets up there, isn't it? I mean, him and Stevenson, well publicised, very good friends, known each other for a long time.
Stop like that with them two straight.
You would think
so,
yeah.
They wouldn't give a shit. Again, because they have that in them. To just all of a sudden go, friend of mine. You see Stevenson just go in, Keyshawn go, oh, good luck, and you go, we're no longer friends, we're rivals now, mate. And I think Davis would be the same. So it's great, man. It's a great day to be an American.
But you're right. That's absolutely spot on, because I love that attitude. I love the attitude that they've all got, and we're seeing more of it with our own fighters this side of the Atlantic in recent years, where I like fighters who take not just an interest, because you definitely take an interest, but look to try and take some control over their own career, because why shouldn't you? But I think you've been discouraged from doing that. I think traditionally...
Yeah, we've never had control, but I think...
as much as you ever can have in this business, but I think traditionally a lot of the time an attitude that promoters have liked to encourage would be one where a fighter sits on the ring apron and says, well, it's up to my team, I do what they say, and they do this and they do that. I'm not a fan of that.
We spoke about it, didn't we? With the heavyweights recently.
You want to see someone say, no, I'm in this, I'm involved in this, I have a say in every decision that gets made, and they've got a name in their mouth or 2 or 3 ready to go during fight week.
You want that if they're making the decisions and choices that we like. There's a few fighters who don't make decisions that we like. So I think you're going to have too much control as well, by the way. I think that's an issue.
You need to listen to the right people as well,
we've seen that over things, not quite boxing related, that people, boxers having too much control. Boxers deciding who's on the undercard, and like Dillian White with the pay-per-view, for instance, and they have the control of the undercard and things like that. I'm not digging Dillian White out, but big names or Fury, people like that, they decide who's.
There's got to be a balance.
It's crazy, some of it. I just think that, but also you don't want it like it was back in my day, where you're fighting him next week, or you don't fight at all. It was a little bit like, it wasn't quite like that, but it was a little bit like that. Now you can fight him. Okay, I'm not fighting him. Okay, no problem. Who am I fighting instead? Oh, no one. You're not fighting now. When am I fighting next? Well, we'll bring us back next month.
Yeah, power can be used correctly, and it can be abused, can't it? And that's a good example of it. Where
that's what I said.
Sometimes, sometimes some fighters need to be made to take better opponents.
But they're and from other the same cloth.
Yeah, of course.
You can get fed to the wolves, can't you? And it's not really right.
Yeah. Well, the problem you've got with the biggest problem with boxing is loads of problems.
I was going to say, it's not open.
The biggest problem with boxing is but fighters getting overpaid for matches that are not worthy of that money. Always fighters get loads of money, but then when big fights are being made, then everyone wants too much.
It distorts the market.
Terence Crawford's just a fine example of his last fight, for instance.
Keyshawn Davis, a lightweight from Norfolk, Virginia. Can anybody else name a lightweight from Norfolk, Virginia?
I can name a lightweight from Norfolk.
Not Virginia?
No. Liam Walsh.
Anybody?
I think I did see this on Twitter the other day.
Lightweight from Norfolk, Virginia.
Was that Pernell Whitaker?
Certainly. A certain Pernell Whitaker. So he'll have to go some to become the greatest lightweight from Norfolk, Virginia. But it's going to be it's going to be an interesting ride, and I do feel like Keyshawn Davis and Shakur Stevenson, they're both cut from that same cloth. If that fight makes sense from a sporting perspective, let alone just a business perspective, because that's what you hear, don't you? Well, if the business makes sense. But I think they're both of the similar ilk, whereby if somebody says, I think he can beat you, they go, no, we'll fight.
Let's see then.
We'll fight. Yeah. So that's a good one to build in. We all love we were friends and we were brothers and now we hate each other. That's brilliant. They're some of the best build-ups, aren't they?
They probably won't even be the same weight in a year's time.
Potentially not. Yeah, obviously you've got Keyshawn Davis just starting there, and Stevenson has moved into it. I do think Stevenson might stay at lightweight for a little bit.
Well, you want to pick everyone up.
I just don't see. He's gone through the weights fairly quickly in a very short space of time, and there's the big fights are there.
When you look at Stevenson, you think, how did he make featherweight?
Yeah.
Or super featherweight?
Yeah, you do.
How does he make lightweight?
Okay, right. Moving on to our final show to review from this past weekend. Another upset, and this time in the 154-pound division. Sebastian Fundora, the towering inferno. He was towering until he wasn't, Andy. And all of a sudden, Brian Mendoza, as he has done in his previous fight against Jason Rosario, pulls out the shocking knockout victory against somebody in Sebastian Fundora, who was kind of being anointed as the next one at 154 pounds. He had that great run of fights, beat Sergio Garcia. He beat Erickson Lubin. Fundora was kind of on the cusp, and then he was knocked out in brutal fashion.
He was, and it's one of those ones where you watch it. It is sort of shocking when you've got that split second where the arms just drop and someone is standing literally just stock still with their feet close together, and you just think, oh no, because the referee hasn't got time to get in, and there was no hesitation, and it was comprehensive to say the least. With Fundora, I'm not going to say that I saw something like that coming for him, because it's just a really easy thing to say after the event. But I think there were maybe signs there that he wasn't quite what people were making him out to be. I think that's fair. And the opponent he had was dangerous. He's shown us that in the past. So I don't feel like it was an enormous surprise. I didn't expect it, but I don't feel like it was an enormous surprise, and it'll just be really interesting to see how he reacts to it.
Barry, was it an enormous surprise to Andy? How about yourself?
Well, he was winning a fight, and not getting beat up. So you get caught with a good shot. That's what happened. I think when you're so big like that, you're a big target. That's the thing. So once you got hurt, and also when you don't react when you get hurt. Well, to be honest, I think everyone reacts the same way with that first shot. But the second shot was nasty.
Yeah.
Like, what'd you do that for? One of those.
Yeah.
Did you do that, mate? Did you? Like,
Well, he'd had
those were going. I did.
We mentioned the Lubin fight, which was, I mean, it's high up there on a lot of people's fight of the years from last year, and he got hurt in that, and he took a knee, which was, I mean, at the time you're thinking, okay, that's great self-awareness.
Yeah.
For a young fighter, that's a sort of
he got clicked out there.
But that was a different shot. It was a beautiful, because it didn't travel very far. No. He touched with a jab, and then it just kind of before he pulled it back, he just turned over the hook, and then that was it. And it was the perfect impact. And
it's easy to say, you know what to do. You just got to get inside. But everyone knew that in the first place. It's,
you don't have to get inside, because he does it for you, doesn't he? He doesn't box long.
But it's still, it's still hard to get around him. But as well, I think he's always going to be. Thing with something like that, when you're so big like that, when you do get caught, it looks massive. There's no hiding place for you. You can almost hold on, even though you've got those long arms, you can't hold on because you're literally like a beanpole. Obviously, it's classic because also his legs are like sticks, and all of a sudden, so it looks worse.
It does. It looks terrible, doesn't it? He looks so vulnerable in that moment, like he's just standing there like a scarecrow, almost just waiting for someone to come and run him over, and that's what happened.
Exactly what Brian Mendoza did.
And it'd be worse if he was getting battered.
He was winning the fight. Exactly. He was on the verge of stopping him.
If he's getting battered all of a sudden, then that fight, you go, hang on a minute, maybe in the fight we thought he might be. And you always thought that, listen, he's always going to be the way he fights. Giving away the reach sometimes coming forward, you might be open to something that you get higher up the levels. But he got caught, and I think he's still a prospect, and you can still work with him, and you still go far. But people have seen him get knocked out. People will be more committed. You'll see that because people thinking they can hurt somebody once they know they can hurt them. But again, he's been hurt before, but he's acting the right way. But I think now you've seen that will open a door. And how his confidence is after. That's the biggest thing. How his confidence after that. Will he be as committed with his attacks? You can't think when you're an aggressive fighter, which I never was. So I'm talking about my back end, but like. You can't second guess. Just go back to Joshua's issue. You can't second guess your attacks. You either commit to it or you don't do it. You don't do half do it. I had to go back to my one fight. I go back to Freitas. I knocked him down, and my whole plan was to stay safe. In the early rounds, just try and nick a few and stay safe. And then when he tires, I go on. That's my plan. It didn't work. But I mean, once I dropped him, I commit or I stick to my plan. What you don't do is what I did, and what a lot of people do. In between, and you just do nothing, and that's the worry. Will he be like that? I'm an aggressive fighter. I want to be aggressive again, but do I commit? And then you second guess yourself. There's too many thoughts in your brain, and you half commit, and then it happens again, and all of a sudden you go, "Oh, I can't take a punch anymore." You're telling yourself that maybe. Yeah,
and it's interesting because where he gets his success. I mean, we talk about kind of giving up his size, but. Because of the leverage he's able to get on those uppercuts.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
They're beautiful shots. They're painful shots. You can tell they always elicit a response. But if he's, I don't think he's good enough to box behind the jab or kind of completely reinvent his style.
We might have to. I think if he gets a bit more, I think he needs to whip that jab rather than pushing it, I think. Like a Tommy Hearns who really whipped the jab.
Yeah.
But I also think that he might just rip that off. I was winning a fight. I was dominating. I was on the way to stopping him. I just got caught.
Would that be a mistake in your opinion?
No, I think it's not a mistake. As you have to, like boxers said, biggest liars in the planet. You have to lie to yourself and say that was just one thing that will never happen to me again.
I think if he's able to do that, I think that'd be great.
It's a positive, I think. But you still also have to. His team have to go. His training camp, or his training, coach, whatever you want to call him. They have to go. We have to make certain that don't happen by doing this and that.
Because we spoke, didn't we, Andy, before we got going? He boxed George Cota a few years back, and I remember thinking at the time, like, someone's gonna lay Fundora out at some point. I think I might have even tweeted at some point, like, one day he's gonna go, and when he goes, it's gonna be
because he's got, like we've been saying, he's got that long. He is tall, and he is kind of which gives you that, rightly or wrongly, that kind of vulnerable look. And he does like it at that distance whereby you did feel like somebody was probably going to catch him. but he was winning. I mean, there's absolutely no question about that. But
and well,
if confidence now is that is the most important thing. Like they will want to work on things, and you'll try and tighten things up and make sure that it becomes less likely to happen again. But were he able just to kind of almost glibly shrug it off, it might sound dangerous, but that would be the best thing, because the alternative to that is him now just overthinking everything,
and completely
just never being the same again. And we've seen that happen.
And you don't know how everyone acts in a different way. You just don't know. So
exactly.
His next fight will be interesting.
It's really interesting.
And he's been matched well. I mean, just running through his record now. Jamonte Clark, that was a close fight. That was a draw. Nathaniel Gallimore, which is a fringe guy around about the level. Cotto, who we've mentioned. Sergio Garcia, we know how good he is. He was unbeaten at the time. Erickson Lubin, Carlos Ocampo, who, apart from that 1-round blowout against Errol Spence down at welterweight, has shown himself to be a good fighter. So yeah, just as simple as him getting caught by a good fighter as well in Brian Mendoza. Of course, got Ismail Salas in the corner now, and he's having like I don't want to say kind of a revival, because he was never kind of that, but he certainly wasn't where he is now, which is on the back of 2 stoppage wins over one former unified champion in Jason Rosario, and a really, really highly thought after prospect in Sebastian Fundora.
Yeah, I'll just be fascinated to see what happens in his next fight now, and maybe somebody like that can.
He's in a shop window, all of a sudden. An
experienced trainer can kind of really help you with that, as much as anyone ever can. We talked about it a lot with AJ, but it is just one of my favourite subjects, because it's just so reacting to a defeat, particularly one that comes like that. It can just go one or two ways. Some people can shrug it off and just say, well, this is boxing, it happens. But then the flip side to that coin is, this is boxing, that can happen.
Yeah, you need to make sure it doesn't happen again.
And you just you're fucked then. Yeah. If that's you are, aren't you though? It's brutal.
Barry, going to come to you as the resident ex-fighter. What did you make of the end to the fight, the stoppage?
I don't know where you said that.
Okay, the resident ex-world champion.
That's right.
WBO.
Okay.
Anyway,
come on, YouTuber.
What did you make to the end of the fight? One or two people, not necessarily me, but kind of gauging public perception, as I suppose. Do you think he maybe could have got up? Do you think he maybe could have Fundora?
Oh, you don't. That's the way he went down.
Because it looks like, again, not me, but he picks up the count about 4 or 5 and kind of gives the ref a look. Stops around 7-8.
I just think because the way the first shot's bad enough, the second shot's a killer, and it's a bad choice of words, but I had no problem with it at all.
I
maybe
think
he could have gone on, but everyone could go on, and most people can go on, but we're not in the 40s and 50s anymore. I just don't know. You save him for another day, and I know winning's everything to you as a fighter, and it is, but what do people want? What do people?
I think it was a conversation I had with you not that long ago, where you were just explaining to me that when someone gets knocked down and they get back up, just because the fact that they get up at 4,
it was Leewood, I think.
Is kind of like, if they got up at 7 and they've kind of waited and then got up, that shows that they've got their wits about them. If they kind of bounce back up, that doesn't show that they have.
And even if you look at the referee,
because it's just autopilot, it's in you. Like, I've got to get up. And even if you look at the ref, you're there, but you might not be there.
And I know we've seen some great things over the years. Fighters been all over the place. The referee's continued, and all of a sudden he's gone on to win a fight. It's been amazing. Even Graham Hill and Michael Cassini, I know he didn't win the fight in the end, but I mean, they threw the towel in, but the referee Mickey Van threw it back out, then he drops Casillas, and then all of a sudden he heard him, and he dropped him, didn't he? Yeah. And then he gets stopped in the end. But I mean, the towel being thrown, it was the right decision, and the referee should have stopped the fight. Because even though he dropped him, he had to take loads of more punches. But it was great drama, so I understand that. But still, anyone who falls back like that, right?
because he's so big as well. The way that he went down,
his legs didn't bend. He didn't sort of.
No,
fall.
He went straight back. Yeah, it was a real timber moment. Yeah, full disclosure, I was fine with the stoppage, but
it don't seem like it is. You
have to ask the questions, the hard hitting questions that people want to know the answers to.
That was a dig at me, hard hitting.
I think that's all we've got time for with regards to our review. We're going to do a little bit on Joe Joyce, but we're going to do it in another episode just to let Jordan know. But we have to try and make up for some lost time. There we go. Anyway, from me, Rob Tebber, and from our esteemed panel of guests, Mr. Barry Jones and Mr. Andy Clark, thanks very much for stopping by for our review podcast, and we look forward to catching up with you soon.